Hello everyone, I'm bringing you this video in addition to my normal uploads, and this is looking at another couple of issues of British military modelling. Now recently I made a recommended reading video which looked at some articles from these magazines covering the development of British uniform in the Victorian era, and there are in fact two articles which I didn't cover in two subsequent issues which we're going to look at here. The topics covered in these two articles are covered in other books and so forth, more general reference books. So from that point of view, the information is covered elsewhere. However, following on from the video, I did decide to pick up these two missing issues, and we'll have a quick look at these now just to sort of complete the story of the articles that were presented in military modelling in the 1980s, which cover this topic in quite some detail. So we'll have a quick look at these now. So this won't be a particularly long video, we just have the articles in these two issues of military modelling to have a look at. We have February 1983 here and March 1983 here. So we'll first of all have a look at February 1983, and we're looking for the cut of the cloth, which we can see here, the first article here at 109. We'll flick through to 109. Here it is. The cut of the cloth, and again we have the two illustrations here for other ranks and officers, lovely colour illustrations showing the various details of the uniforms, the different braids used and so forth, the different gold forms of gold lace that we used, and obviously the different ways of displaying rank. That's detailed in the text as well, so we have details for officers and other ranks here. And if we turn to the next page, there are also details on the wearing of rank here for NCOs. And you also have a nice original photograph replicated here, and the details here on the Scarlet Arms badges as well. So it really does cover the tunic in quite some detail, both for officers and for other ranks, and also details of how badges were worn, how rank was shown, and so forth. And that's covered in some detail in the text here, as you can see. So that's for the 1881 infantry tunic, as you can see there. And again, the illustrations are a lovely feature of these articles. They're very nicely done and illustrate the points covered in the text very well. So that's the February 1983 issue and the article that we found in there. And if that were of particular interest to you, these could be found for a couple of pounds, something around there, maybe £3. So if that particular pattern of tunic was of interest to you, I can recommend picking up, obviously, copies of these magazines dealing with those specific patterns. We have a look at this one here. Again, we're looking for the cut of the cloth, which we can see here at 212. So we'll flick through to 212. At 204. Not too far here now. Saw it there. There we go. Apologies for that. Again, the cut of the cloth here, and you have the article over these two pages. Again, nice clear colour illustrations here of the tunic, and this is the 1902 through 14 infantry tunic. So obviously the very end of Victorian era, early Edwardian era, through to the outbreak of the First World War. And you can see the return of regimental facing colours, and you've got details there again on how rank was worn, and obviously that's covered in the text again. So with this series of articles, including those looked at in the first video, it carries you right the way through from the introduction of the tunic during the course of the Crimean War, right the way through to this pattern of tunic, obviously worn in full dress up to the start of the First World War. And it's quite, obviously this pattern is still in use today for bandsmen and so forth, essentially, other than in the Guards, who obviously kept hold of what is basically a modified version of the older, the 1850s pattern of tunic, single-breasted tunic, that is. So, as I say, these articles detail the various developments, the way rank was worn and the various changes in quite some detail, and the full set together tell an interesting story of the development of British uniform during the Victorian era, and then obviously into the Edwardian era and on to the start of the First World War. So I can highly recommend these articles, picking up copies of the magazines for these articles if this is an era of British uniform which interests you. So there we are. I do hope you found it interesting looking at these. As I say, this sort of completes the picture of the development of the tunic, which is covered in these articles, and I find that quite interesting. I find the British Army of the Victorian era very interesting indeed. As I say, it doesn't really form part of my collecting at present anyway, but I do find it very interesting, the development of the British Army from the early 19th century, the end of the Napoleonic Wars, through to the late 19th century and the Boer War. Obviously the technological changes which took place and so forth are fascinating, and obviously the development of the uniform is part of that. So I hope you found it interesting looking at this, as I say, just to follow on from the previous video. If you have found it interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as always, a huge thank you, massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video. Until next time, bye for now.